In October 1994, 3 film students disappeared in the woods of Burkittsville, Maryland, while filming a documentary. A year later, the recorded material was found that explains the strange circumstances of the disappearance. The following story narrates what happened in these recordings. The Blair Witch Project. Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard are 3 film students who set out to make a documentary about a popular legend in the state of Maryland, specifically in Burkittsville. A large monochrome camera, backpacks with everything needed for camping, and the eagerness to film a documentary that promises to bring a lot of value to their film careers accompany the trio on the long-awaited trip.
Ooh, do you believe in ghosts?
I don't want to go cheesy. I want to really avoid any cheese. I want to present this in as straightforward a way as possible, and I think the legend is unsettling enough.
Upon arriving in Burkittsville, the recordings do not wait. Heather as a reporter, Josh as a cameraman, and Mike as a sound engineer start the documentary in the town cemetery. According to Heather, Burkittsville was formerly called Blair. It was a town where no more than 20 families settled there 200 years ago, and they continue on that hill or under the city. An unusually high number of children are buried in this cemetery, who mostly passed away in the 1940s. However, no one seems to remember anything strange relative to that time, at least anyone alive. But the legend tells another story, a story whose evidence surrounds them, recorded in stone. The group proceeds to interview the locals about their knowledge of the Blair Witch. They mention that there was a man named Rustin Parr, a hermit who lived in a house near the mountain for a long time. Approximately in the fall of 1940, the children began to disappear. No one knew anything about why this was happening. Finally, one day, Mr. Parr went down to the market and said,
"I'm finished at last."
What did he mean by that? At first, no one understood what he was referring to, but the authorities went up the mountain, and when they checked his house, they found the lifeless bodies of 7 local children.
What he did is he took the kids down in the basement by twos, and he made one face into the corner.
Really?
And then he would kill the other one. And then when he was done with that, he'd grab the one out of the corner and kill that one too.
With the great discovery in Rustin Parr's house, the community of Burkittsville was shattered. When explaining why at his trial, Mr. Parr mentioned that he could not tolerate their gazes. He felt they were watching him. That's why he took one of them to the corner. This story also intertwines with the legend of the Blair Witch. It is said that the Burkittsville forest is enchanted. The rumor has it that there was a woman named Mary Brown. The town thought she was crazy. Brown claimed to have had a close encounter with the Blair Witch. This woman still lives in the town, so the group of filmmakers visit Brown's house to get more information. Mary says that in order to survive, her father and she used to fish in a stream near the Burkittsville forest. She was lying on the leaves while looking at her fishing rod in the sky, and suddenly she felt something next to her, a very strange sensation. It was a woman covered in dark fur, like a horse. She wore a wool shawl on her shoulders. Heather asks her if this woman scared or threatened her. Contrary to what was expected, Mary Brown mentions that the woman didn't say anything, but she was staring at her. Then she opened the shawl, showing the rest of her body with fur. As they were about to spend the night in a motel, the trio recalls the information given by Brown, and it may be that her experience with the Blair Witch is grouped with the many other possible lies she tells, like that she is a dancer, historian, or scientist studying in an energy department. At the end of the day, the team ends up having a few drinks because tomorrow something awaits Heather that will make for a very long day. The team approaches the grounds of the Burkittsville forest and interviews 2 men who were fishing in the stream.
"Do you know anything about the Blair Witch?"
Heather asks them.
"I know the myth. I don't believe much in it."
They respond. Next, the man tells his version of the story. A girl in the late 1800s named Robin Weaver was walking through the forest and disappeared. 3 days later, she appeared in front of her grandmother's house. That's when the great myth was created. Robin Weaver said something about an old woman whose feet never touched the ground. The other man adds that he saw upstream a white fog coming out of the water, which climbed up a tree and then disappeared. The documentary seems to have a lot to cover. Heather, Michael, and Joshua pack their backpacks and delve into the depths of the famous forest that seems to hold many secrets. The documentary seems to have a lot to cover. Heather, Michael, and Joshua pack their backpacks and delve into the depths of the famous forest that seems to hold many secrets. The team arrives at Coffin Rock, a rocky mound where it was said a malevolent force roamed. When Robin Weaver was reported missing, a search party was sent after her. But although young Weaver returned, part of the search party did not. The bodies of this group were found precisely on Coffin Rock by a second search party. Heather recounts on camera that 5 brave people were found in the most horrific way possible. All had an indecipherable text carved into their faces with terrifying precision. The group that found them went to get the sheriff, but when they returned, the bodies were no longer there. That happened at Coffin Rock. The group sets up their camping tent and rests until the next day, before continuing their tour of the forest. The 3 sleep in the same tent, and in the morning, Heather asks Michael and Joshua if they heard any noises last night.
Yes, I heard noises.
Joshua answers.
They were like 2 different noises. One of them could have been an owl, and the other was like a cackling.
The team prepares for their next hike, and Heather mentions having gotten a little lost according to the stipulated route. Even with this, she promises that it won't happen again today, but after some time, looking for the next point of interest, this happens.
Josh feels it's necessary to look at the map now, even though I know where we're going and we're going straight ahead up.
This is where we were. Let me tell you what you said to us. It's like 2 miles away. Then it's like 2 hours away, 3 hours away. Maybe it's 4 hours away. How could you?
Did you agree to do this project?
I did. I agreed to a scouted out project. I didn't
It
agree
is
to just
scouted out, and I
around.
told you that getting to the locations wasn't going to be easy.
Guys, it's cool. It's cool.
The situation between them seems to calm down anyway. Michael lets Heather know that he doesn't trust her knowledge to lead the hike. Hours later, the team comes across what appears to be an indigenous cemetery. Heather Donahue captures several piles of rocks scattered on the ground, surrounded by strange branches in the trees. Upon seeing this, Heather mentions having heard something about this cemetery from Mary Brown.
I didn't pay attention because I thought she was crazy. It was something about Esau and a pile of rocks.
Night falls and the team establishes another resting point. This time it's not raining, which allows a bonfire to warm up from the frigid forest. The trio proposes to return to the strange piles of rocks in the dark with the aim of capturing something transcendental given the unusual cemetery and the night that surrounds it. While this is happening, Joshua moves some of the rocks that for Heather were sacred, so she puts them back in place. Unfortunately, nothing happens, so they return to their shelter to rest. But in the early morning, they are awakened by a strange noise.
Hello? Hello? It's all around us. That is fucking weird. Michael, are you saying you're not coming down?
I ain't going down there.
Why not?
Because I'm not. I don't hear shit.
Because you're fucking scared.
Because I don't hear anything anymore.
Because you're fucking scared. You could not deny hearing it. Get your ass out. What's the big deal?
The situation does not seem to escalate, as they subsequently show us footage when it is already daytime. While preparing to return to the car, Heather asks Michael his opinion about what happened last night.
Personally, it was someone playing with your head.
Joshua answers.
But nobody knows we're here,
says Heather. On the other hand, Michael is upset about Heather's hysterical attitude last night.
Understand me, whatever it was, I just wanted to record it. Well, to me it sounded like a group of people running,
Michael answers. Time after a long walk, Michael mentions not remembering anything about the place they are passing through when they started their journey. However, according to Heather, they are returning by a slightly different route, because while exploring they took a turn.
We've been in the middle of nowhere for 2 days.
The car is parked in the middle of nowhere, almost.
Like, look at this shit, man. This is nothing.
Look, I'm not saying for certain.
We're not camping here. Get
Maybe
us
we're
home.
near the
Turn
car.
camera
Maybe
off
we're
and
near
get
the
us
car.
home. Give me the fucking map. Give me the map. Heather, give me the...
You want to see the map?
God damn!
Shush. If we keep our heads together, we'll be just fine.
Fucking bullshit! Mike, chill.
Just relax, Mike.
Don't fucking tell me to relax!
The rain, the fatigue, the anguish of thinking that they have gotten lost intertwine among the members of this journey, who will now have to spend the night again in the forest as it is getting dark. At 5:30 a.m., they hear strange noises again near the camp. This time they confirm that it is the footsteps of a person, but they can't see anything. Moments later, in daylight, they find 3 piles of rocks in front of the camping tent.
It's absolutely weird, but I don't care because all I want is to get to the car. Whatever it is, they don't want us here, so let's get out of here.
Joshua tells Heather. We also hear Heather say
Incredible. We leave when strange things start to happen.
making evident her desire to capture something of value for the documentary, even if it means putting everyone's life at risk. Once the tent is packed and ready to finally get to the car, Heather loses the map.
No, I don't have the map.
Joshua answers.
Do you really not have it, Heather?
Michael adds.
I always keep it in the same place. One of you had to take it.
It is at this moment that the real terror begins for the trio of students, because not knowing what is the exit of the confusing forest, they decide to walk in one direction until they find something. But specifically, this decision is what will give free rein to the most enigmatic disappearance occurred in Burkittsville, Maryland. Hours later, in search of a clue that will allow them to find the exit, Michael, for the first time in days, starts to laugh. The nervousness is palpable among all the members, but in Michael, it is reflected with this laughter, which ends with a great revelation.
What? I kicked the... I'm sorry, it's fucked up. It's fucked up, but I kicked that fucking map into the creek yesterday. It was useless. I kicked that fucker into the creek.
After the heated situation, they are left without the will to keep trying to get out of the forest. Joshua sitting on the ground, with his hands on his face, Michael leaning against a tree looking into the distance. Even with this division, Heather tries to keep the team together by motivating them. Minutes later, Michael circles the place where they rest and ends up finding what appears to be a site where voodoo rituals are practiced. This discovery is the last straw, as it brings back the anguished desire to get out of the forest as soon as possible. Unfortunately, it is getting dark. Night falls and the team enters the camping tent. This time they will not make a bumfury, because if they do, they will attract attention, taking into account that there are people stalking them. That same night, the trio of students are awakened by the murmurs and laughter of children. Suddenly, something begins to shake the tent intensely. Michael, Joshua, and a Heather holding the camera run full of fear and hide in the tall grass, hoping not to be reached by the strange event. Approximately an hour later, the sun rises.
We are safe,
says Heather. So they return to the tent to pack their things. Meanwhile, we observe small branches and clues similar to those seen in the cemetery in place for voodoo rituals. As if it were one misfortune after another, after having walked all day, they come across the initial point of their walk. They have been walking through the forest in circles. It is already getting dark and they know what awaits them. Josh loses his sanity for a few moments and begins to reproach Heather that this would not have happened if she was not recording everything she finds. This ends with Heather breaking down in tears as this dream of creating the documentary turned into a nightmare. Being the night and being in the tent, Josh apologizes and Michael lightens the moment by remembering their favorite foods. The footage returns when it is already daytime, and we notice that Josh has disappeared. He is not in the tent, and when they shout his name, he does not answer. Where did he go? This is where the climax of this story begins. Michael and Heather decide to walk east, as it seems Josh will not return. Time later, while in the tent, they hear Josh's agonizing screams in the distance. Scared, they keep their cameras pointing towards the darkness with high expectations. The unusual thing is that they can't find the direction of the screams. It's as if they're coming from everywhere. Heather and Michael end up distrusting these screams, as according to Michael, if it had been the real Josh, he would have shouted where he was. The next day, Heather finds a set of branches tied with a fabric similar to the shirt Josh was wearing.
Okay, I'm just gonna move it from the front of the tent. Okay? I'm taking it away. I'm taking it away. I'm just throwing it.
Despite trying to ignore the paranormal situation that is happening to them, perhaps to avoid further psychological impact, Heather ends up opening the set of branches to see what's inside. It's some dental pieces, a finger, a piece of Josh's tongue and hair. Horrified by this unexpected discovery, she decides to hide and conceal what happened from Michael, as it is not good news. The daily walk ends up becoming a habit for Heather and Michael, and what remains of the day will not be an exception. Night falls, and they show us one of the iconic scenes of this story, with Heather recording her tearful face and addressing the camera, evidencing the great weight of guilt she carries.
I want to apologize to Mike's mom, to Josh's mom, and to my mom. I want to apologize to everyone. I was very naive. I regret so much everything that happened, because despite what Mike says now, it's my fault because it was my project, and I insisted. I insisted on everything. I insisted that we weren't lost. I insisted that we keep walking. I insisted that we walk south. Everything had to be my way, and this is where we ended up. And it's my fault that we're now hungry and cold and stalked.
The emotionally charged scene ends with Heather hearing what seems to be Josh's voice asking for help in the distance. This is where the terror arrives. Heather and Mike take their cameras and decide to film what will be the last footage found of this journey. When both walk towards Josh's voice, meters ahead they come across a ruined house accompanied by children's hand marks on the walls and inscriptions in a hidden alphabet. As they walk through the dark corridors, the tension increases with each step.
Mike, where are you?
I'm right here.
Suddenly they hear Josh's voice coming from the attic, but when they go up, they realize that the voice is actually coming from the basement. Michael runs desperately to the basement to save his friend Josh. Heather is left behind by the speed at which he was going and tries to catch up. The footage positions us in Michael's point of view, who, upon reaching the basement, is knocked down by something. All we have left is to listen to Heather's agonizing screams, who moments later arrives at the basement, finding Michael looking at the corner. Heather's terrifying crying abruptly stops when she is also forcefully knocked down. And the story ends. Footage explained. It's time to gather all the data. The Blair Witch Project tells us about the journey of 3 students in their attempt to film a documentary about the legend of the Blair Witch. Along this path, gathering all possible information about the terrifying legend, they are led to the Burkittsville forest, where the horrors perpetrated by this witch were evidenced and it is the place where people have had some experience with this entity, at least those who have lived to tell about it. Before detailing what happened and exploring some situations in the movie, it is important to highlight the universe that has been built. The stories mentioned in the Blair Witch Project are not only explored in this film. There is a whole universe of content revolving around this city called Burkittsville, or formerly Blair. We have 3 movies. 1. The Blair Witch Project, released in 1999. 2. Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2, released in 2000, which was positioned for some time as a sequel. 3. Blair Witch, released in 2016, being a direct sequel to the first movie, as the plot follows Heather's brother, James, in his attempt to uncover the mystery surrounding his sister's disappearance. This movie ignores everything that happened in the Book of Shadows and does not take it into account. The reasons can be several, but the fact that the story at the time did not convince the public, and therefore the Book of Shadows has unfavorable reviews, could have contributed to the choice to eliminate its story. In addition to these movies, there are 4 documentaries, a web series broadcast on YouTube in 2013, video games and novels that detail subplots of people involved with Burkittsville. All of this is a sample of what later caused the release of this movie, which was not expected to become the most successful movie in relation to investment and box office earnings. Having told the plot of the movie, there may be some confusion, with the stories linked to the legend of the Blair Witch. What is this legend about? Is there really a witch? The movie doesn't mention some data that I will say next, but over time, the lore that has been developing around this film ties some loose ends and complements the story told. Chronologically, in the video game titled Blair Witch Volume 1, Rust and Parr, it is mentioned that many centuries before the city was created as such, it was believed that an evil entity resided in the forest. A native tribe had an encounter with this entity, who fed on the pain of a child in an endless ritual. After sending shamans and warriors after this dark force, the tribe disappeared without a trace. In Shadow of the Blair Witch, a documentary that delves into the disappearances and stories surrounding the town, they tell us about Ellie Kedward, who was attributed the mysterious events that occurred in her time. In 1785, Ellie was accused by the local children of witchcraft and therefore was banished from the city of Blair. After this, her life was taken in the forest, tying her limbs and stretching her in a way that resembles the figures with branches shown in the movie and promotional images. The following year, some accusers and children disappeared without a trace. This is when the legend called the Blair Witch is created, and fearing a curse, people flee the town, promising never to mention the name of Ellie Kedward again. Subsequently, in 1825, a year after the city was rediscovered and founded under the name of Burkittsville, the first annual wheat harvest picnic is celebrated. During this event, Eileen Treacle, 10 years old, strayed from the stream that borders the forest and drowned in the shallow waters. 11 eyewitnesses claim to have seen a ghostly white hand come out of the water and pull her. Her body was never recovered. This situation is attributed to the Blair Witch. What happened has a link with the fishermen that Heather interviews, as they also experienced a white shape moving through the stream. In 1886, the already mentioned disappearance of Robin Weaver occurs, a girl who meets in the forest an old woman whose feet did not touch the ground. A search party goes after her, but they never return. A second search party goes after the first one and finds them in Coffin Rock in the most violent way possible. Approximately in 1940, the case of Rust and Parr and the 7 children is presented. It is believed that he was ordered by the entity of Ellie Kedward to commit the horrors with the children in the basement. Ellie orders him to reveal his actions to the town, and although at first the locals did not believe him, the police arrive at the house, finding the victims. This house is the one we see at the end of the movie, with the children's hands on the walls. In Shadow of the Blair Witch, it is mentioned that Rust and Parr's house was burned down by the townspeople after his media arrest. so we wonder how Heather and Mikey find the house if it was burned to the ground. This is where the theme of time travel is incorporated, with the forest being a place where time and space is altered, and would explain why the students walk in circles. This fact connects with the stones found by Heather in the forest, which apparently were 7 piles of stones, each for a child victim of Rustin Parr, or Ellie Kedward. Later, the witch places 3 piles of stones in front of the camping tent for her next victims, that is, the group of students. Hand in hand with the latest film, Blair Witch from 2016, the opening scenes detail that Heather's brother, James Donahue, finds a video where his sister, missing for 20 years, allegedly appears. This discovery sets the stage for the movie, which later reveals in its ending a figure that seems to wear a wool shawl, connecting to Mary Brown's description in the 1999 film. Furthermore, the director later confirmed that the tree-like creature shown in the movie is Ellie Kedward, made of branches. It's as if she has become one with the forest. This brief synopsis sums up the events surrounding Burkittsville. The movie's ending is somewhat open, leaving room for interpretation. There are some interesting hypotheses about what might have happened to the students. In the end, Mike is seen in a corner while Heather drops her camera, implying that she dies at the hands of the witch. The same fate for Mike, considering that the witch doesn't directly cause the deaths, but rather possesses people to do so. As happened with Rustin Parr and the children, it is presumed that one of the students was possessed to commit the murders, and Josh was the possessed one, leading the group to doom. When Josh disappears and agonizing screams are heard in the following nights, it is the agonizing screams as he pulls out his teeth, tongue, and hair, which Heather later finds. Additionally, Josh is the one who hits Mike and Heather respectively when they enter the basement. Josh follows Rustin Parr's modus operandi, placing one victim facing the corner while dealing with the other. This is the most accepted interpretation of what happens in the movie. Although there are other theories, such as extraterrestrial contact, as unbelievable as it sounds, a very curious hypothesis that eliminates the factor of a dark entity as we know it and replaces it with extraterrestrial contact. Everything that happens in the movie, supported by scenes like encounters with viscous material or the noise Josh hears on the first night, reinforces the belief that the town has been linked to aliens. There is also the hypothesis that there is no witch, and what happened in the movie was a plan by Josh and Mike to take Heather's life. However, seeing the alternate endings confirms that there is a supernatural phenomenon in the movie. With the aim of creating a comprehensive video about this movie, what better than to mention its alternative endings? In an attempt to conclude on a high note, 4 alternative versions were filmed, seemingly never used. Specifically, the endings show certain differences when they head towards Josh's voice in the basement. In ending 1, after Mike is hit by something, we switch to Heather's point of view. She reaches the basement, finding a mythical pagan lattice seen earlier in the movie and Mike's body with a rope in the corner. Heather is subsequently hit, and the movie ends. In ending 2, when Heather reaches the basement, she encounters Mike watching her from the corner, while the branches move in an attempt to make the scene more terrifying. Heather is then hit, and the movie ends. In ending 3, the same as the chosen ending happens, but Heather ends up finding Mike hanging. In the 4th and final ending, the strange environment full of branches reappears, and Heather finds Mike in a strange position, seemingly crucified. The shocking endings did not convince the directors, but as Daniel Myrick, co-director and writer of the movie, said,
"What makes us afraid is something that is out of the ordinary, something unexplainable. The chosen ending kept the audience off balance. It challenged our conventions of the real world, and that's what really made it terrifying."
Approximately 23 years ago, the Blair Witch Project was released in the United States. propelling the found footage genre to fame and becoming one of the best horror films in history. The movie, directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, took shape when they were studying film in college, realizing that documentaries about paranormal phenomena are often scarier than traditional horror films. And it is this concept that is used as a basis to build found footage horror films. The conveyed realism ends up giving us the sensation that we could experience a similar situation at any moment. With a script of only 35 pages and the rest being character improvisation, the iconic film was produced, accompanied by a key resource for its success, promoting the movie with police reports and news-style interviews, trying to find an explanation for the disappearance of the students. They used their real names in the movie, reinforcing the realism. Thus, in July 1999, the film's release gradually expanded until it became known worldwide. Millions of people were terrified by watching something that looked too real. The Blair Witch Project leaves a legacy and opens the doors to films that want to rescue the same terrifying concept. Due to not needing a high budget to tell such a story, equally interesting films have been released over the years, such as Paranormal Activity, Wreck, or Cloverfield. Unfortunately, the same resource that aims to enhance terror plays a trick, as in our technological age, it is easy to detect the falseness with which these films are recorded. Plus, the actors' identities are quickly revealed. Even with this thought, found footage films continue to be released regardless of whether they are credible or not. Ironically, the Blair Witch universe is no exception, and a franchise reboot is already being considered. Lionsgate, the film production company, is considering restructuring the concept that had been built. Perhaps because the sequels after the first film didn't quite work. So don't think this came to an end. I hope I have made a fairly comprehensive video about the history, plot explanation, and the importance of the Blair Witch Project in the horror genre. Remember to like and comment on this video so that YouTube recommends it to many more people. It would also be great if you share it with your friends. I'm sure they will like it. See you soon.